Good morning. A full-scale investigation is underway into a fatal shooting yesterday by Melbourne police. A 29-year-old man on the run after escaping from a remand centre in Canberra 10 days ago was shot by a police officer after a chase. Questions have been raised about the incident because the offender, 29-year-old Arthur James Nelson, was armed with only a beach umbrella.
Victorian police have strongly defended the constable in shooting the escapee, saying the officer had no other option. The incident began when police carrying out an anti-burglary operation stopped a van in suburban East St Kilda. All four occupants, 2 men and 2 women, fled the scene. A chase followed through a park and the grounds of the Caulfield Grammar School. Police say the 2 offenders were then spotted hiding in bushes in the yard of this house. When a group of officers moved in, the 2 men tried to escape. A struggle ensued, and one of them, later identified as escapee Arthur James Nelson, was shot in the head.
It's an instantaneous reaction to an event at the side of the house where 2 offenders sprang from the bushes, one armed.
Nelson was allegedly brandishing a length of wood. The other man and the 2 women are expected to appear in Melbourne Magistrates Court this morning. Jeff Maurice reporting for Today.
Residents of the inner Sydney suburb of Redfern are recovering this morning after a day of disasters. Only hours after dozens of families were evacuated from their homes following floodwaters up to a metre deep from a burst water main, residents from the same street were told to leave once again, this time because of a ruptured gas main.
Only hours after the streets of Redfern had been drained of floodwaters, last night emergency services personnel were knocking on the doors in the area again, after gas was discovered leaking from a 300mm line.
We've had crews on standby. As soon as we've been able to pump the water out, we've not been able to do anything until that water's been removed. Of course, what's happened tonight is that when the water has been removed, the gas has escaped.
Work crews were able to repair the damage quickly, but residents of the nearby Sydney City Mission had been evacuated, along with families from several nearby homes, when it was feared the gas might explode. It had been a long day for everyone in Elizabeth Street. Dozens of residents earlier forced out of their homes by flooding were understandably angry. It had taken several hours before workers even arrived on the scene to effect repairs. This morning they continue the heartbreaking task of cleaning up. The only consolation, the New South Wales Government has promised compensation for those affected. Mark O'Leary reporting for Today.
In overseas news, hopeful signs this morning from the United Nations that Iran and Iraq are finally ready to settle their differences and end the 8-year war in the Persian Gulf. During talks with UN Secretary-General Perez de Cuellar, both nations have indicated they were willing to discuss peace. A ceasefire agreement could be announced within a week.
As the peace talks continued today, United Nations Secretary-General Perez de Cuellar added to the sense of optimism that Western hostages may soon be released, suggesting that Iran was now increasingly willing to help.
They may exert their influence, a positive influence, in order to have this problem out of the way, both for humanitarian and political reasons.
Mr. de Cuellar has had 2 sessions with the Iranian Foreign Minister Ali Akbar Velayati. He's also sounded an optimistic note about the hostages.
And we do hope that all innocent people as hostages in Lebanon or any place in the world could be released very soon. Thank you very much.
Iraq's Foreign Minister Tariq Aziz arrived at the UN a short while ago. He said Iraq would not be stampeded into a peace treaty and demanded face-to-face negotiations with the Iranians.
A federal cabinet reshuffle is being planned because of the now almost certain appointment of Foreign Affairs Minister Bill Hayden to the post of Governor-General. There'll be a number of changes after Mr Hayden's expected resignation from Parliament in October, with Senator Gareth Evans being tipped to move from his present transport and communications portfolio to take on foreign affairs. In London, Liberal leader John Howard is maintaining the opposition's attack on the planned Hayden appointment.
It's hypocritical of him to accept a job that he doesn't at heart believe in. I mean, he may have had, a fairly recent change of heart, but that's all very convenient.
Federal government plans to run TV commercials about the September referendum questions might be challenged by the opposition in the High Court. The government wants to air the commercials to explain the questions. But the coalition says the $3 million advertising campaign is blatantly political. The referendum questions will ask voters to decide on proposed changes to the Constitution. In finance news, news of lower than expected growth in the US economy sent the greenback tumbling overnight and helped Wall Street to a late sell-off. Near the close, the Dow Jones is down nearly 18 points, thanks to second quarter growth coming in at 3.1%, when the market had been expecting a figure around 4. Gold put on almost $2 on the back of the dollar's decline, and the Aussie rallied a full cent, but we're unchanged on the cross rates. Full details in Business Today, plus Jim Curry, Chief Executive of BHP Utah. To sport now, and in rugby league, Australia regained some lost credibility after beating the rest of the world team in Sydney last night. While the crowd of 15,000 cheered Australia's 22-10 victory, the win came at a cost, with injury to centre Mal Meninga, who may have broken his arm for the third time in 15 months.
In the short time coach Graham Lowe had to prepare a competitive international blend of Kiwis with Lions and a Kumul, he got it right with a try by Kevin Iro in 6 minutes. The Australians hit back almost immediately, Wayne Pearce sending Andrew Eddinghausen over. But the rest of the world replied, taking a 10-6 lead with another rehearsed move in what was clearly the best try of the match.
There he is there, very wide Mark Graham, slips the ball to Mike Gregory, and there's just no one at home.
The pressure was intensified, and had it not been for this copybook tackle by Gary Jack on a runaway Gill, the rest of the world would have been out of Australia's reach. But the skipper spun the world on its axis with a try under the sticks to give Australia a 12-10 lead.
Lewis, oh, he's so strong, he's done it again!
In the second half, Mark Sparkles McGaw really shined in his first night among international stars.
There'll be a try here, Mark McGaw in for Australia.
18-10 to Australia, and then Mal Meninga's nightmare returned after making this tackle, raising fears of a broken arm for the third time.
If it is broken again, I have to seriously consider retiring from the game, but let's hope it doesn't come to that.
The rest of the world tried to bridge the gap, but McGaw consolidated the win when the Aussies had the numbers to take full advantage.
You know, with players like Wayne Pearce and Gene Miles and Mal Meninga inside me, all I had to do was just catch him. And that 80 minutes was the best, experience for me in my career.
Charles Christian reporting for Today.
One match was played in the National Soccer League last night in Melbourne. A goal by Paul Trimboli gave South Melbourne a 1-0 win against Sydney, Croatia at Olympic Park. Today's national weather forecast now. Fine conditions are expected in all major centres. A top of 20 degrees in Alice Springs, 31 in Darwin, Cairns 26, Townsville 25, and in Brisbane 20 degrees. Sydney should reach 19 degrees, Canberra a chilly 13, Melbourne and Hobart 16 degrees, 17 in Adelaide, and 18 degrees in Perth. Next on the ITN news from London, 4 people injured in another terrorist attack in Northern Ireland.